and we have two attending on WebEx today, and they are Representative Sutton and Representative Sawyer. So thank you, everyone. Our first, we do have a quorum then with those two on WebEx, and we will then consider approval of the minutes from our November 2024 meeting if there's discussion or a motion. Yes, Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that we accept the minutes as given.
Thank you. And a second from Representative Penn. Is there any discussion? Not seeing any, then you all have heard the motion. Do we have a hand raised on WebEx or?
Aye.
Okay, we have a mic issue. I think Representative Sawyer, your mic is on.
Yeah. Oh, I was trying to vote.
Okay, okay. Well, great. We'll keep your mic on then. If there's no discussion, you all have heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, no. The motion carries. Thank you. Then our first, I guess our second order of business and our first conferee then is from the Kansas State Department of Education, Scott Gordon, General Counsel. So thank you for being here this morning. Please make sure your microphone is on. Introduce yourself and welcome to committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, everyone. My name is Scott Gordon. I'm General Counsel for the Kansas State Department of Education, and I am here to present a change to the regulation that was adopted by the State Board of Education earlier this year. As you all will recall, I appeared before you and presented some changes to graduation requirements. There was a robust discussion as to whether or not high school students should be required to complete a FAFSA in order to graduate from high school. That conversation continued with the State Board of Education during their public hearing. I will tell you, they decided at that time that they needed to move forward with the rest of the graduation requirements in order to have them in place for the current freshman class. So they adopted the regulation, as it was proposed to them. And then they asked the department to bring back, okay, we want to change to FAFSA. We don't want that to be a graduation requirement anymore. Let's find another way to make sure students and families are getting this information. A proposal was taken back to the state board that they were satisfied with. And so they have now, their intention is to remove that as a graduation requirement.
Thank you for taking into consideration the discussion of this committee and taking that back to then the State Department of Education. And with that, then we'll open it up for any questions. Senator Faust-Godot.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So then what was the major decision? Just leave it as it was or do some announcements over the intercom at school to tell the students about FAFSA?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe the answer to the question is the accreditation team with the Department of Education is going to be working with school districts to develop plans as part of accreditation to ensure that the high schools are making sure the information is getting to the families. I know many high schools, they actually have a specific FAFSA days or FAFSA afternoons, evenings, whatever they may be, where families will be invited into the school and staff will sit down with them and spend hours at a time, if need be, helping them fill out the forms. I'm not saying that's going to be a requirement of every school district. That's just an example of what some schools are doing. So it's other means that are going to be available through accreditation to how the school district's responsible to make sure that information's out there.
Thank you. Committee, other questions? Not seeing any. That seems to be the one proposed regulation we have in front of us from the State Department of Education. So if there's,
It's the only change we have for you.
It's the only change you have. So, well then, thank you very much. Appreciate you being here and your testimony. Thanks very much for joining us today.
Members of the committee.
Next, we will hear from the Department of Agriculture and Kate Langworthy, staff attorney. And I think also present maybe is Mariah Louderback. Is she here too?
Yes, ma'am.
Great, and she's the brands recorder administrative assistant. So, well, welcome to committee. Please make sure your microphone is on and go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the committee for the opportunity to appear. Again, as stated, I'm Kate Langworthy, staff attorney for the Kansas Department of Agriculture, and Ms. Louderback is here to answer technical questions if there are any as well. Today, in keeping with the theme of small batches of regulation updates, I'll be addressing two proposed amendments to two individual regulations adopted for the administration of our livestock brands program, KAR 9-15-2 and KAR 9-15-4. Excuse me. These amendments update the regulations to reflect revisions that have been authorized by recent updates to KSA 47-417. The changes to KAR 9-15-4 implement a fee increase for a livestock brand registration and brand renewal from $45 to $70 for a 5-year recording period, as well as an application fee of $5 for any new brand registration applications. The proposed change to KAR 9-15-2 eliminates the restriction that earmarks be recorded at the time of the original brand registration, allowing the earmarks to be recorded alongside a registered brand at any time, and also eliminates the nominal fee requirement for the recording of earmarks on subsequent brand registrations. These regulations are authorized by KSA 47-426, which directs the Animal Health Commissioner to adopt such rules and regulations as are necessary to carry out the provisions of Article 4 of Chapter 47 of the Kansas Statutes Annotated relating to livestock marks and brands. As noted in the economic impact statement, KDA solicited feedback on the proposed changes from several stakeholder groups, including the Kansas Animal Health Advisory Board, Kansas Cattlemen's Association, Kansas Livestock Association, and Kansas Farm Bureau. And those entities and individuals that responded indicated support for the proposed amendments. A public hearing regarding these proposed amendments is scheduled for January 30th of next year. A notice of such was published in the Kansas Register on Thanksgiving, November 28th, 2024. As of yet, the department hasn't received any comments, but we do have a few people registered to attend that public comment hearing. Again, thank you for the opportunity to appear, and I'll now stand for questions.
Thank you. Committee, are there any questions? Yes, Representative Wassinger.
Really more of a comment. Thank you, Madam Chair. I spoke to a representative who has tags and brands, and she said this is exactly what they talked about, and she was just fine with it. So thank you for coming and explaining it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Faustigedo.
So this $70 for 5 years, previously, was it 5 years as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yep, the 5-year recording period is maintained. It's just the fee is increased by $25.
and Madam Chair, if, just for clarification, brand, the definition in the contrast between brand or tag.
Sure.
Thank you.
A brand is a permanent mark that is is on the animal itself. Tags are something that's placed in the ear that can be removed. And so a brand is a more permanent form of identification by farm or ranch. Tags are also more for individual identification. It can also bear the farm and ranch as well, but it's more individual.
Thank you. Senator Francisco.
Thank you. I appreciate Representative Wassinger's comments, and just wanted to say this is exactly what we were discussing as concerns in the Senate Ag and Natural Resources Committee, but it was really the House that got this work done.
Joint effort there. So good to hear. Committee, any other questions? Not seeing any. Then again, one proposed rule or reg from the Department of Agriculture. And thank you very much for appearing here today and for your testimony. Appreciate it. Next, we will hear from the Board of Examiners in Optometry. And we have Jan Murray, Executive Officer. Welcome to committee. Please make sure your microphone is on and please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Jan Murray. I'm the Executive Officer of the Kansas Board of Examiners in Optometry. And today I have two regs that need to be updated. And hang on a minute. The first one is the 65-5-2, which is the application for licensure for application. This just updates it to put everything that's in the statutes into the reg. So it's like one-stop shopping for an applicant, that they can just go to this reg and they can see everything that is going to be required of them. Nothing is changing. There's no more additional fees. It's fees that they're already paying. So it's just, like I said, just one-stop shopping for them just to go one place and see what's all required. And then the other one is KR 65-8-4. This is the content of a prescription for both contacts or eyeglass contacts and pharmaceuticals. And this is just basically, again, updating the reg. The reg had not been updated since 1992. And so technology and stuff has changed. And so that's more or less what all this reg is doing. There's no additional fees for being incurred by optometrist or anybody else. And you have the one lone comment that I did receive when I sent out a request for comments and if any additional fees would be required. So.
Could you remind us what that comment was?
It was, let me have it. Sorry. It's been a while. That he didn't think the word shall was used correctly. And then he also made a comment that not every glass prescription will have a cylinder power, ACES or prism. And he thought that there would be a better way to use shall. And then about the pupillary distance we're removing that as a requirement. And he thought that that should still be required. And it's not like they can't put it on there. It's just not going to be one of the required elements. Because I've had optometrists tell me that they think the optician measures that better than what they can. So that's one reason, and there are machines today that measure that for the optometrist anyway. So it's just, sorry, I'm not an optometrist. So some of this stuff is Greek to me still.
Well, thank you for sharing what the comment was. Committee, we have two proposed regulations here. Are there any questions regarding the first, the application for licensure by examination? Yes, Representative Carmichael.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was, pardon me, I was concerned by Dr. Gilmore's comments. So I want to visit with you a little bit more in detail about what his concerns are. If I understand it, and I'm of course a lay person, but if I understand this correctly, well, in fact, he explicitly says not every glasses prescription will have a cylinder, power, axis, or prism. And I think that has to do with the type of correction that is necessary to improve the patient's vision. If there isn't for a particular prescription a cylinder power, an axis, or a prism, how does a licensee comply with a regulation that requires you to provide these things if it's not necessary to the prescription?
Just to clarify, I think that's the second regulation that we're talking about.
Yeah, because the first one is
I had asked if there were any questions, so hold that thought for just a second. Are there any questions regarding the application for licensure by examination change to that regulation? All right, I'm not seeing any, so then back to the representative's question. Thank you.
I apologize, Madam Chair. I got the cart before the horse.
Oh, that's all right.
I know we're way behind this morning and we're trying to catch up.
And I honestly, I don't know if I can answer that question, to be honest with you, because like I said, I'm not an optometrist.
Is there someone on the staff at the agency? I mean, who made the decision to do this if you can't explain the regulation to us?
So my agency is very small. It's me and the five-member board, who are, 4 of them are licensed optometrists, 1 is a public member, and they would be the ones that I would have to refer your question to. And so I would have to get back with you on that. because they are the ones that went through this reg and came up with the, how it is.
Let's go to the third point that Dr. Gilmore makes, and I think it's in regard to the second proposed regulation. Frankly, it's of more concern to me. It has to do with the papillary distance, I believe, PD. Is that correct?
Right, it's the distance, and I went over and talked to an optician the other day just to make sure I could explain it to you what it was. It's the distance between your pupils this way.
Right. And in order to make glasses fit correctly, some of us have more space between the bridge of our nose than others, and so we have to have that pupillary or papillary distance in order to make sure we're looking at the center of our glasses, not through one edge or the other. Is that what was explained to you generally?
Right.
So Dr. Gilmore's concern was that people who want to obtain their glasses online, for example, the frames I'm wearing right now, I can't obtain in Wichita. The only way I can get these is to order them online. How is an online provider going to be able to sell me a pair of glasses without the PD or papillary distance?
And I think the patient could go back to the optometrist and get that from them probably without even any charge. I think that was kind of what was explained to me in a board meeting, is that they can always go back to the optometrist and say, hey, I'm ordering my glasses. I need this, and they can get it.
Well, I'll save my comments for the comments portion. Thank you.
Thank you. Just for clarification, could you define the difference between optometrist and optician?
An optometrist is the MD, or the OD that actually examines the eyes. The optician is the one who fits you for the glasses. They're the ones that when you go and you pick out your glasses, they'll come in and they'll measure or whatever and do that stuff, but they are not licensed.
So opticians aren't licensed at all in Kansas? Do we have other questions regarding this regulation? Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, going back to this concern about the use of the word shall, the individual is stating that not every glasses prescription will have a cylinder power axis or prism. So in what cases would there be or wouldn't there be?
Said I am the totally wrong person to ask, but like I said, I can go back to the board and ask and get an answer. And as far as the PD, we're saying it's not required, but that's not saying that they can't put it on there anyway. And a lot of them, they all computer now anyway. A lot of the stuff is just going to shoot out from their computer program anyway, I would think.
So I appreciate that comment about the PD, but I'm kind of concerned about the patient can just go back, because not everyone lives in close to their optometrist. They may have traveled to make that visit. And so just saying, if it wasn't measured, that you need to come back, would have a different.
And like I said, I've had optometrists say opticians measure that so much better than I do.
But again, we have the question of ordering.
Like I said, I can take that to the board.
Thank you. Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. So with the comments that you've heard from the committee, do you think that the board will continue with these? Because there seems to be some grave concern. I hope that the board will choose not to go forward. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
I will take it to the board, and that's their decision. I know the next board meeting is scheduled for January 8th, and that's when they were having the hearing on this. So.
Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the board did see this communication?
Yes.
Representative Carmichael.
I infer from one of your earlier answers that when you hold the public hearing, it will be at a regular board meeting?
Correct.
And that means there will be 5 doctors of optometry in attendance. 4, I'm sorry, I thought you said it was a 5-member board.
Five members, 4 optometrists, 1 public member.
Okay. And so presumably at the public hearing, there will be somebody who are able to answer the questions that were asked of you here today.
Correct.
But it's just the legislature that is not favored with someone who can substantively answer questions. I'll save my
Had I
remark.
known it was going to get complicated, I would have asked a board member to be here with me.
That would have been a good idea, in my opinion. Thank you.
I will know better next time if I get complicated questions, or not so much complicated regs that are medically, whatever.
Technical.
Yeah,
Technical.
yeah, medically, technically, yeah, that kind of stuff that's over my head, which I admit I'm out of my element here.
Committee, are there any further questions? Not seeing any, then thank you very much for your testimony today and appearing before the committee.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Finally, then, we are ahead of schedule and ready for committee discussion and comments on the proposed rules and regulations that we had presented to us today. We'll start back with the Kansas State Department of Education. Were there any comments regarding the proposed graduation requirement change? Not seeing any. Then the Department of Agriculture will take first the earmarks, limited recognition rule and reg. And not seeing any. Then any regarding the brand registration and renewal fees. Not seeing any. And finally, then the Board of Examiners in Optometry. We have 2 regulations there. One, application for licensure by examination, and the second was content of prescription. Is there any discussion? Representative Carmichael.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My concerns regard, as the chair pointed out, the second proposed regulation. First, an optometrist goes to the trouble to respond to their inquiry and says, I've got problems with this. You're asking us to do something we shouldn't have to do or maybe can't even do. And the board sends one whose response to a question they knew would be coming up is, I don't know the answer. I'm the wrong person. Why am I here? Why are we here if agencies send us people that defend the regulation by saying, I don't know what it means? That's a waste of our time. And I don't know whether we should be concerned about this regulation or not. Maybe leaving it blank means it's 0 correction in those aspects. I don't know. But it's really disappointing to me that the agency would waste our time, the staff's time, and the taxpayers' money by sending someone to a hearing to say, well, we have experts at the board, but I don't know what the answer is. The second concern regards this PD, and I understand that a patient could go back to their optometrist and get that distance. Ironically, because the state insurance plan no longer cooperates with my eye doctor, I've had to change doctors. And so now I have to try to find these frames online because I can't get them at any of the state authorized providers. And guess what? When I sent in the prescription to get new glasses, they need a PD. And it's not on the script. It's an impediment to people being able to buy glasses online. And given the fact that in my experience, most optometrist practices also sell glasses, seems to me it's a restraint of trade. I think it ought to be a part of the exam. You shouldn't have to go back to the doctor. There's nothing that says the doctor is going to see you a second time and not charge you. In fact, when I went back to my doctor a second time, I've got a receipt for $35 that wasn't covered by anybody's insurance. It came right out of my pocket so that I could try to buy my glasses online. I don't think that these regulations have been properly considered. I think that they ought to be, the board should not adopt them. The board needs to clean up its act, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Is there further discussion regarding these proposed regs from the Board of Examiners in optometry? I'm not seeing any, and I'm not sure how we would distill then if there are comments to be included in our report. But Senator Tyson,
Thank you, Madam.
not saying reject those, but we'll just need to discuss how we want to distill that for the report. Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm not sure, it's been done different ways in the past. Jill might be able to answer this, but I think this might constitute a letter from the committee to the board, so that when they have the hearing, they would hear from the legislature and their comments. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
We heard that thank you, Senator. We heard that the public comment meeting is January 8th, 2025. Is that when the public hearing is? Is that right, Ms. Shelley? So the purpose of the report is to provide our comments that will be available to the board in advance of the public hearing, which is going to be January 8th. Part of our report could be an additional letter separate from the report. Has this committee done that in the past? No, not. I'm getting conflicting information about that, but regarding the content and the substance of the representative's comments, it is disappointing that we have an agency before this joint committee of the legislature and without any ability to answer substantive questions is disappointing. The legislature is perfectly capable of reading the regulations as they were presented to us, but the purpose of the committee getting together and meeting and staff putting this meeting together and being present is to answer questions from the committee. And I think it's the concern of the committee that those questions of substance weren't answered. Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I don't want to dive in on the presenter. My concern more is the response to the letter that was presented by Dr. Gilmore, not the presenter herself.
That's correct. The committee's not singling out any particular person. It's the actions of the board as a whole. It's a constituted board of 5 members, and none of the members were present today or sent anyone to answer substantive questions. So we're talking about the board here. Yes, Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So in this bulletin or email that was sent, the individual is asking if the concerns could be at least discussed by the board. Would it be appropriate for this committee to say, we hope that at the hearing, the discussion of the board will be made available to the public? Or notes from that discussion?
So committee, we have an opportunity to share our concerns and our comments with the board. The way to do that is through the report. So what do we want to say in the report? Representative Carmichael, if you want to help distill that into a couple of points, and then we can discuss.
Whether it's in the report or by means of a letter, I'll leave that to others to describe. But I believe that this committee has 3 concerns. First, that the committee expects that agencies, when presenting regulations, proposed administrative regulations to the committee, will bring witnesses before the committee knowledgeable in the subject matter of the regulations. That's just a basic requirement. My second concern is that the committee expresses concern regarding the use of the word shall in proposed regulation 65-8-4 parent small a and parent small c and parent small d. And I think that's all that we need to say, is that we express concern regarding the use of the word shall. We could try to explain it all, but we didn't have a technical person here to explain it to us. So we're not going to do a very good job of explaining it to others. The third concern is that the committee expresses concern about the failure to require the papillary distance on prescriptions for eyeglasses because of a concern that this may impede patients' use of online providers. Words to that effect, I think, would accomplish what we need.
Thank you. Are there any discussion about the three kind of bullet points there? Senator Tyson and then Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just, if the representative would mind, I would strike the word online, because if you take it to another provider within the state, it could also impact.
I think the senator's observation is wise.
With that small adjustment then, if we could, Jill, as you're relating the report language, Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm talking about the second comment that was made regarding the use of the word shall. And we might say that we would like the board to make sure that the use of the word shall is limited to those requirements that they expect on every prescription. Rather than, I mean, I don't think we want to replace the word shall, because some of these things on the list we probably do want to continue to have. And so shall is appropriate there. But so I don't know if I've explained that well enough.
Are there any questions regarding the proposed comment added by Senator Francisco? I think that's a fine adjustment. I have a question for the reviser. If the committee isn't satisfied that the proposed rule or regulation has been duly or properly presented to the committee, is it something that would impede the further progress or adoption of the regulation? I mean, one of the obligations is to have it reviewed by the by this committee, and if the committee feels it hasn't had the ability to properly review it, if you understand the question. Just checking to see whether the board has met its statutory requirement to have it reviewed by this committee.
Right. Thank you, Madam Chair, Jenna Moyer, Revisor Statutes Office. I'm trying to find the exact statute that the requirement that the committee present is not actually in statute. The requirement is that the joint committee hears, or that the joint committee receives the testimony from the agency. And so there's not actually an affirmative statutory requirement that the agency present a certain amount or a qualifying individual in order for the administrative rules process to proceed. And I'll find that exact statute in just a minute.
Would it be available for this committee to include in the report that the committee is concerned that it didn't have a full opportunity to fully hear the regulations? I think that's kind of what our concern is. We didn't have an opportunity to fully hear, fully vet this regulation to the satisfaction of the committee. Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Was that the intent of the representative's first comment of the three? And so it may already be included?
It is that, yeah, that the committee expects agencies to bring witnesses knowledgeable to substantively answer questions. And that would then tie into the requirement that the legislature hear the proposed rules and regulations. Yes, Ms. Moyer.
Thank you for your patience, Madam Chair. And with an assist from Jesse, I was able to find the part of the statute. It is KSA 77-436 subsection C, and it says, except for regulations revoked pursuant to the statutory process we did a few years ago, all proposed rules and regulations shall be reviewed by the committee during the public comment period. And so, I mean, actually, this statute doesn't even require a meeting, but that has just been always the process that has been followed through. So the committee is just required to review them, and as a courtesy, agencies would typically come to the meeting and present to help and aid in the committee's understanding. If the committee wanted to put in the report a recommendation that, you know, at future meetings, you need to have a person here who can answer substantive questions, the committee is free to do that.
Thank you. I think that the first concern expressed by Representative Carmichael isn't just directed to this particular board, but it's kind of a more broad statement from this committee that whoever is presenting, that the committee expects them to bring witnesses knowledgeable regarding the substance. So am I correct on that, Representative Carmichael, that it's not just, it is directed to this board, but more broad than that?
Yeah, it has broader applicability than just this board and just this issue, because we see this with great frequency on financial impact statements, that they're insufficient. The questions are answered with not applicable when they are applicable. But notwithstanding that, the statutory language, I think the revisor is correct. We don't have the power to require them to tell us what these are about. It sounds like it's just an obligation on our part to quote unquote review them. And I could have done that I did do it last night, but I mean, I literally could have accomplished as much last night as I did being here today.
Thank you. Representative Penn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think the representative from Wichita, I think that is spot on in his comments. And as we're looking and trying to decipher this word and the use of the word shall, it goes to what he was just talking about, the financial impact statements. If you're going to make something mandatory, imperative, or requirement or an obligation, if folks are going to comply with that, it's going to take some money to do so. We need someone here to be able to explain that with a little bit of integrity. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative. Committee appreciate the robust discussion. I think we're ready if Ms. Shelley wants to kind of distill that into a some proposed language for the report for the committee to consider, that would be helpful. Or are we not ready for that? And we'll have to see the draft of the report when it comes out for our review.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Jill Shelley, Legislative Research. I do expect there to be changes after I stumble through this. We would have 3 separate statements from the committee. The committee expects an agency to bring witnesses knowledgeable about the subject matter so that they may properly be, so that they have the opportunity to properly hear and vet the rules and regulations with understanding. The second one has to do with the use of the word shall, in that the committee asks the board to consider whether shall is used to limit those requirements expected on each prescription that is added. And third is that the committee requests that papillary distance be included on all prescriptions so that the patient has a choice of opticians for fulfilling that prescription.
Thank you. Committee, any comments regarding the proposed language? First, Senator Francisco. Oh, sure. Representative Carmichael.
I think that's an excellent attempt to encapsulate what I was saying. I would suggest in the first section of our remarks that rather than using the word vet, we use the word from the statute, which is review.
I would also like to add that comment to our overall report, not just for this board, but if we could make it clear that it's, that concern applies to all rules and regulations from agencies and departments that are brought before the committee. Yes, Mr. Milholland, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jordan Milholland, Legislative Research. I just wanted to ask a question for clarification on that first recommendation about bringing knowledgeable staff. Is there any desire to specifically state regulations and the accompanying financial impact statement or something more specifically about that? Or would you like to just leave it at regulations?
I think we should include the economic impact statement as well. And I think the committee would like the statement to indicate bring witnesses, conferees, knowledgeable, not necessarily just staff, because it would have been helpful today, for instance, to have a board member here who could answer these questions. If I've got that right, committee. So
The spirit of bipartisanship
yes,
before
Representative
Christmas.
Carmichael.
This spirit of bipartisanship before Christmas is very disturbing to me.
It's a wonderful time of year, right? So, yeah, Senator Francisco.
Thank you. I'm wondering if Ms. Shelley could just repeat the sentence or about shall.
Is that for the report you mean? So, yeah, Ms. Shelley, if you could, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Exactly repeat? Probably not. The committee would like the board to ensure that shall is used to be limited to those requirements that would be expected on every prescription.
Perfect.
Okay, then that looks like that's our report. The draft will be coming around pretty soon, I would think, because the public hearing is January 8th. So we'll get that done. And then committee, our final order of business, which I guess we can schedule. We don't know the makeup of the members of this committee, but looking for a date by mid-February. Yes, Ms. Shelley.
If I may, Madam Chair, just this morning I learned that as far as we know right now, the next public hearing is February 26th.
So it would have to be before February 26th?
Yes, and if you look at your session calendars, that is that's right after turnaround.
So we can go ahead and tentatively set the date, and if it needs to be moved, then it will. Committee, if you want to take a look at calendars, or if we can get a couple proposed dates based on the session calendar, which I don't have pulled up in front of me, that would probably be helpful if you have that. I think the session calendar has been distributed and is public. So could we have legislative research propose a few dates?
We have no information about anticipated pro forma days. If were a pro forma day in late January, that probably would be a good opportunity for a meeting date. Another opportunity might be February 24th. It's a day with no session, so permission would need to be received for that meeting. I have the calendar in front of me.
Committee, are we thinking a Friday? might be a pro forma day in January. So we have no pro forma days listed on the calendar in January. Do we have any in February? Well, then, yes, Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I don't think we need a pro forma day. If the committee, odds are the other committees do not meet on Friday. So
That's why I was thinking Fridays, because they don't usually meet on Fridays. But I know folks want to travel home, so
yeah.
Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know that there was some discussion at the Special Budget Committee that we would be meeting Mondays and Fridays. So the other opportunity might be to look at a lunch hour and hope for the best. This is always something that could be rescheduled.
Yes, let's go
So-
ahead then and pick,
Chair.
yes, Representative Penn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It did come to my attention that there are a number of things that are going on with the week of the state of the state and the state of the judiciary presentations.
The week of the 13th.
Yes, ma'am. And those dates, we're supposed to have state of the judiciary, state of the military now, and state of the state. So a lot of committees won't be meeting on those times. That there may be some opportunity there if we have a light load. De facto pro forma days.
Well, let's throw out, and what does everyone think of January 15th? That's Wednesday, January 15th, our third day of session. So we'll go with that then, and if it needs to be moved, it can. At the lunch hour on January 15th. Do we have a lot of rules and regs at that time, or? And if it would be better to do it in February, because then we can do one meeting rather than two, but for now, we'll do January 15th. Okay, and it can be moved if needed. So, well, thank you, everyone. This committee doesn't have any more meetings as it's duly constituted today before we start our next session of the legislature on January 13th. So it has been a pleasure serving with each and every one of you on this committee, and being the chair is an honor to serve in that way as well. So thank you for your participation, your robust questions, and thank you to staff as well who puts this all together, makes it possible, and to each of our conferees. We generally have a lot of questions from committee, and they have all been very willing to at least try and answer the questions as best they can. So with that then, our work is concluded, and wish everyone happy holidays and a happy new year, and we will see you then. I do believe this is Senator McGinn's last committee in the legislature, so I don't think she's on WebEx, but would offer her the opportunity to say a few words, but we will wish her well in her future endeavors and thank her for her service. So thank you, everyone, and with that then, we are adjourned.